Off the Ball.
In association with Air. Don't miss live and exclusive Premier League action this month on the Air Sport Pack.
This is News Talk.
Yeah, you're welcome along to our Saturday panel. He's so good we don't need anyone alongside him. Andy Dunne is in studio. How are you?
So good I got left behind. I want to know who's the decision maker.
It's not me. It's not me. People get paid far more than me to make those sort of decisions.
I can take O'Driscoll getting it ahead of me, but I don't know. Toland, you're
not having. You're not having?
No.
He's an experienced operator at this stage, but I would agree he's probably coming to the end of his tenure.
I got to get my claws in.
We said one more year. It's Keith Wood you need to be looking at. He didn't even turn up for the quarter-final and then just rocks back in for the final.
That's it, the rock stars.
We wanted to keep you here because, listen, there'll be background noise if you were in Bilbao and we get the real
make
good
sure you can hear
insights.
everything I said, yeah.
Yeah. If you were going, would you be as wildly confident as most people are that Leinster are going to win this?
Well, I was very wildly confident during the week, and I'm not sure why. When I woke up this morning, I went, "What are we all losing the run of ourselves?"
What's the basis of that?
I think the Racing forward pack. I think the fact they can spring. I would have plumbed for Carter to start actually, but looking at Lambie's been adequate. He hasn't shot the lights out, but he's been excellent. And I kind of looked back through Carter coming off the bench in the quarters and changing the game, and figured if they establish parity with Leinster in terms of the physical battle and the forward battle, and you've got a guy like Carter to come off the bench with 25 to go, who, albeit an ageing player, is a legend, and I think still has in his locker an ability to come out and change a game. And one of the things he did even in the Munster game when he came off the bench was make 3 brilliant cover tackles, and that's not that type of cover tackle is not the work of a mercenary. It's a guy who is actually still cares. He did not need to be doing those tackles in the Munster game when they were in the lead, and he could have left it up to the likes of Nianga or younger, fitter guys, but he showed a hunger in that, and I think he's essentially, I think is he heading off down to Japan at the end of this?
Well, he's 36. He should probably just retire, but he's going to go for one last hurrah.
One last hurrah in Japan for about 3
wheelbarrow
times
circuit.
the money. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I suppose that's why.
Lambie's a veteran himself at this stage, and vastly experienced. But is it that Carter at 36 with the legs going, that Racing would need to change their style of play dramatically, that they couldn't play at this pace they want to play if Carter was at 10?
No, I just think I don't believe for any specific reason he would come off the field and they would use him either to kick, either to increase the pace of the game. I think he would be used in a way that he has such variation and he has such capacity to make good decisions and I think he's also got a gravitas about him that when he goes on the field, if they need something drastic to change in their approach, I believe the rest of the squad will follow him. And if he comes on and says we're changing tack, we're doing X, Y and Z, it'll be done. And
so with Machino out injured, that natural leader amongst 9 and 10, that if things aren't going well, if it is Leinster who come flying out of the blocks, that Dan Carter, you have someone who's experienced pretty much everything you can experience in rugby, that can sort of steer that ship out. Yeah,
and he, despite he's got quite a calm demeanour. He's got this kind of Roger Federer look about him, not unhassled. But
it's a good look.
It's a great look, and but this is one medal that he's not won. He's won everything else, and guys like that who have this crazy hunger about their careers, you'd be damn sure he'd love to finish off on a European Cup medal, and that's a little bit worrying.
Because that's a nice thing. We don't really think about that because, as you say, he's such a calm individual and he's not one of these out there loudmouth boasting about his achievements despite being arguably the greatest number 10 of all time. That actually in 15, 20 years when he's on that after dinner circuit, suddenly he can go, you know what? And I also came to France, to the Northern Hemisphere, when I was in my mid-30s, and I could even win a Champions Cup then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Wilkinson went down and did it with Toland. So yeah, for all those reasons, I've probably changed my tack. And from earlier in the week, I thought a 10, going with the bookie spread. And for whatever side of the bed I get out of this morning, I've got a bit nervous. So
let's hear from Brian O'Driscoll. He was on with Ger last night about whether or not the Leinster supporters are been a little bit overconfident.
Brian, this time 24 hours we're going to know who the European Cup champions are. There's a wild confidence coursing through the Leinster fan base at the moment. As ever, 24 hours out, people begin to get nervous. Are you getting a little bit nervous about the levels of confidence that you're seeing from Leinster and their fans in particular?
Yeah, I think it's always the case. I think you're bullish early on in the week. You look back over the course of the group stage, how well Leinster performed, and then improved on those performances at quarter-final and semi-final level. So all those things point towards a team that are really in their pomp. But then, finals can do nervous things to people. They can make players freeze a little. So there's still a few players, even though they've been great this year, haven't had the opportunity to perform on the biggest stage in club rugby, in Northern Hemisphere club rugby. So, we still have to wait and see how those younger lads are going to react. You would anticipate that it'll be water off a duck's back to them, but you do have another Racing team that were losing finalists 2 years ago, and they've got huge motivation. So finals are very unique things, and I wouldn't quite say all bets are off or form goes out the window, but there's absolutely scope for a team mentally being in the right place and backing that up with an on-field performance, and that's where the bookies lose out.
I was making the point to Dave a little bit earlier that with most of these players having won a Grand Slam, that they have that inbuilt confidence now that they know they can deliver on the big occasion. He was saying, well, actually, for Leinster, most of these players actually haven't won the bigger games. But I was also thinking of the semi-final and the final, beating the Pro 14 champions. And we talked up Scarlets for the sort of devastation and havoc they could wreak. They stood up to that and dealt with it so comfortably. And also against Saracens, where maybe Leinster weren't at their very best, but still won that game comfortably. That they have that now built in there, that this is just a natural next step to go on and finish the job.
Yeah, I think there's been a little shift in Irish rugby culture, or even to be with broader strokes in Irish sporting culture, that we carry the mantle of favourites a little bit better. Based over the last 3 years of Irish international success and provincial club success, we're comfortable being favourites. I think the Leinster side are, the way they performed in those, maybe not quite full cylinders in the Saris game, but comfortable winners. There was a lot of pressure on them in the...
What is going on there? See if we have some issues with our sound in studio. What we might do actually is, while we sort it out, we might take a quick break. And we'll try and sort out the sound issues, and we'll get you back. This is why we didn't let you go.
Like Star Wars,
bad things happen when couldn't trust you over in Bilbao. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back to Andy in a moment.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
In association with the Air Sport app, allowing you to cast your favourite sporting action from your tablet or mobile phone straight to your TV.
Join that conversation on Facebook and Twitter.
Don't miss the unbeatable action of the 2018 All-Ireland Championships. Ahead of a great summer of sport with the Sunday Times, our expert team of Henry Shefflin, Paul Galvin, Dennis Walsh and Michael Foley are ready to tackle all the talking points throughout the season. Only in the Sunday Times this weekend.
The couch. Your nemesis. The enemy that traps you indoors every evening. Your four-legged adversary that says, don't go out there. It's the unknown. And before you know it, you're watching the match in the house with a half-eaten pizza resting on your belly. Again. Live a little. Leinster Rugby season tickets now on sale. LeinsterRugby.ie/season tickets. Subject to availability.
What about a new iPhone? How about a free iPhone? At Carphone Warehouse, the iPhone 6S is free. That's a super-powered 32-gig large-screen iPhone 6S free. A huge saving of €79. That's a Carphone Warehouse exclusive. Make the iPhone 6S your choice. You won't find a better deal at the network stores. We've checked. Hurry, offer while stocks last. Any network, any phone, any plan. Only Carphone Warehouse. T's and C's apply.
As a first-time buyer, you're ideal for your family's unwanted furniture. There's your big sis right now, looking at that monstrous wardrobe thinking, ugh, that thing's gotta go. To Aoife's house. Well, at Ulster Bank, our new First 5 mortgage has 5 great benefits for first-time buyers, including a great low rate. It's helpful when you want to put your own stamp on your new place, not your sister's. Search Ulster Bank First 5. Ulster Bank. Help for what matters. Maximum loan to value is 90%. Security and insurance required. Product fees may apply. Over 18s only. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply. Warning, if you do not meet the repayments on your loan, your account will go into arrears. This may affect your credit rating, which may limit your ability to access credit in the future. Warning, if you do not keep up repayments, you may lose your home. Ulster Bank Ireland DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Eastern philosophy from FBD Hotels. Go east and relax in our Castleknock Hotel, a nudge from the bright lights of Dublin. Refresh in our spa before cocktails in our Lime Tree Bar. Or go southeast and recharge at Faithleg, our majestic estate in Waterford. Find golf, a splash in the pool, or afternoon tea in our Aylward Lounge. Whatever you're looking for, find something you weren't, like great value 4-star deals at castleknockhotel.com or at faithleg.com.
The new 100% electric Nissan Leaf. 0 to 100 kilometres per hour in 7.9 seconds. Zero left to prove. Book your test drive today at nissan.ie.
At Power City, you can recycle your old electrical appliances free. To find out more, go online to powercity.ie or call in store today.
Are you a single guy seeking someone special? Here's some really valid reasons why you should join Two's Company. It's efficient, no time wasted scrolling or swiping through dating apps. It's totally private, your information is safe and secure, and it's authentic. No fake profiles, just real people seeking genuine relationships. So take a more professional approach and come in and talk to us today. See twoscompany.ie. You're in good company with Two's Company.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
In association with Air. Don't miss live and exclusive Premier League action this month on the Air Sport Pack.
This is News Talk.
All right, welcome back to Saturday's Off the Ball. I think we have sorted out our sound issues. Apologies for that. Andy Dunne is still alongside me in studio. I want to play another clip of Brian O'Driscoll because I want to talk about maybe one of the big selection points for Leinster, which was the inclusion of Jordan Larmour. Maybe the decision was made up for them because of the injury to Fergus McFadden and also the fact that James Lowe couldn't be selected. But here's what O'Driscoll had to say about Larmour.
But we got a taster for what he's capable of. So if he gets put into space, we've been loading Teddy Thomas in the European in the Champions Cup this year. I tell you what, Jordan Larmour feels as though he's about to burst in a similar vein of form if he gets the opportunity. So he'll think this is the big time, and I want to play as many of these games as I can. And I'm getting to do it as a 21-year-old. Wow, how lucky am I? And sometimes I would say the ignorance of youth, but the naivety of youth serves you well, and you're still a young kid, having fun, and that's definitely the way it was when I was a 20 or 21-year-old playing international. It was like, this is great, isn't it? Look, we're playing against Australia and playing, in a Grand Slam game against England a few years later. He's gotten to do that at a younger level in a great team with Ireland and a great team with Leinster. So you'd anticipate that he'll be inspired by the players around him and the control that we've seen from Leinster.
He's only 20, Jordan Larmour, and he gets the start, just his fourth start in the Champions Cup in the final. Interesting after the semi-final, the comments from Johnny Sexton in the press conference about when Larmour picked the ball up out in the wing and he had several options inside him and decided to go it alone and was ultimately taken down, and the chance went to begging for Leinster, albeit when the game was over. And maybe it was subtle and there was the timing involved of we're all in a high place, but just to remind them of actually, no matter what stage of the game, you need to make the right decision. Do you feel the conversations that have been happening with Larmour over the past week, that you get it into his head about his defensive responsibilities, about playing the simple options at times, and then on the day of the game you tell him, you go do your thing?
Well, I think at his age, and I noted Johnny Sexton's comments, I think they had an element of being protective of him as well. I don't think Johnny was having a go. I think Johnny was saying, he was quite headless essentially in that situation. However, he did refer to how confident he is and how much he backs himself, even though it looked like the wrong decision. Leinster held on to the ball, and if you hold on to the ball, it's never really a wrong decision. You maintain possession. I think there's been an concentrated too much on apparent defensive frailties. I mean, he got out of position once in the Italian game, And that happens. And that happens when... That has happened to James Lowe on a number of occasions. James Lowe was out of position about 6 times in the Connacht game the previous week. So for although James is a bit older and has the Super 15 experience, he is an absolute law unto himself, James Lowe. And I mean, that's been a huge strength of his, and it's been received and celebrated as a strength. I think Jordan Larmour, just because he's 20, has a very, very similar approach to James Lowe. He appears instinctive, carefree, a bit wild, but I think they just need to cut him loose going into this final. And because it's not that he's...
What do you mean by cut him loose? Do you mean
say, don't
worry about the defensive side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to... I suspect he's well versed, having been very, very well coached this year, and Leinster's defence has been excellent. He understands the system. He made 1 or 2 mistakes, and particularly one obvious one in that Italian game. I think it's been a millstone around his neck. He's not a bad defender, and he's very physical and brave. I think he needs to be cut loose in the sense he's a 20-year-old playing a European final. It's not like he is surrounded by dimwits. He's surrounded by some of the most smart tacticians in world rugby at the moment. He's got a guy like in the pack. They have a brilliant line out. They've got guys like Fardy, who seems almost like a father figure within the group at this stage. They've Sexton obviously in the back line. He's got Carney, talking to him all game. The back 3 defending as if they're tied together with a rope, and Carney's just pulling those strings. So I would say to the likes of Jordan Larmour is, don't overly dampen him. Just let him go out and have a go, because he can bring something electric that can break up a game when it's needed. It's interesting, the conditions are a little damp. It could be, albeit no one expected, it could be a well-marshalled defensive game. And then when you need a guy who can cut it up, that's the guy who could do it. So
you don't want to wear him down with responsibility almost going into this, telling him that this is a European final. You can't make a mistake defensively. It could be the decisive moment if you get caught out of position, if you rush the line too quickly. Rather than that, you trust, as you say, Nasewa, Carney, Sexton, Henshaw, all well able to run a back line to communicate and say, listen, maybe this is the moment. This is your Brian O'Driscoll in Paris moment. This is the moment when Jordan Larmour arrives. But is there also a risk that if you're saying that, on the other side, if we were on French radio, we'd be looking at this guy, Jordan Larmour, going 20 years of age. There's the weakness. That's what you try and exploit.
I think, I really just don't think he is a weakness. I think there's too much in his game. And I'd say it would be quite a good thing for Leinster if they started to go after him, because I think he's brave enough under a high ball. I think in the tackle situation, he's not going to lose out in terms of physicality. And there is potential for positioning issues here and there, but there's no real trade-off there in terms of James Lowe, because he's always out of position in defence. So I think the psychology of dealing with a young guy in a European Cup final like that, if they give too much input and they get around him too much and they feed in too much, they're actually showing a level of anxiety in themselves to say, look, we're kind of worried about you. I think they just need to cool the jets and back them. I think the personnel within that group, both management and senior players, will have a trust in him. I don't anticipate they've overdone it or overcooked it with an information overload from Renton all week.
I know before the semi-final against Scarlets, you were unsure of the decision to go with Jamison Gibson Park and drop James Lowe out of the squad. With the injury to McFadden, with Larmour back fully fit, and with Luke McGrath touch and go, even though he is named in the team, is this the right decision today to leave James Lowe out of the squad?
I think it is, yeah. I would say I got it bang wrong there in for the semis. I was concerned about Gibson Park based on the prior game. Probably the most important game he played previous to that was the Munster game around Christmas, and he had a pretty abject performance. So I unfairly tarred him with that brush, and 4 months later, it doesn't mean he's a bad player, but I was concerned going into the semis.
How does that dynamic work within the squad? Because I haven't heard a huge amount this week. James Lowe seems like he's an incredibly popular figure since he comes in, makes everyone, has a big smile on his face, and people around him have a smile on their face. That actually he's been left in this position despite maybe training as hard as anybody else over the past 2-3 months. Could well be the form player, but because Leinster have got this slightly messed up situation where they can't fit 3 into 2. He's left out completely. Like, can there be some sort of residual effect of unhappiness amongst people in the squad? That's how it's all played out.
No, I think they're too much a bunch of cutthroat, tough professionals to let it bother them. I think they're well aware that it ultimately comes down to combinations and what is best for the team in the given situation. I don't believe they're going to they're too hardened around the edges to let that affect them.
Right,
would be my view.
I know you're a big fan of one of the imports, Scott Fardy.
Yeah.
What is it that he's got that you like?
Well, I went to the semi-final and with a mate of mine, and after about 3 minutes, Fardy got caught on in the defensive line. He was in midfield in the defensive line. He actually made a high tackle. The reason he made the high tackle was because he was marking at 13, who had a bit more gas. And my mate turned around and says, Fardy's got nothing, the guy's too old. Looking at a classic case of, he's been caught out.
20 minutes.
Wrote him off after 3 minutes. In fairness, he turned around. My friend said after the game, well, I couldn't have got that more wrong. The remaining 77 minutes were as good a performance I've seen from a back row player in memory. He was just sensational. There's a number of names. I mentioned this previously. There's a number of names for the position of back row. There's wing forward, flanker, loose forward is another one that's used, and that's where I think it resonates most with Scott Fardy. The loose play, every time the ball bounced loose, he dived on it. No matter where it was, and you're like, how is this guy magnetically attracted to the ball? What
is that? Is that good positional sense?
I think it's a sense of understanding of the game. It's an anticipation thing, and I think great players have it. They have an awareness of what might happen next and an anticipation, and he has it in bucket loads. I could not get over the amount of times in that semi-final where he tidied up something for Leinster that looked like it was about to go awry. He picked it up, he made 5-7 yards. He turned dodgy ball into safe, fast ruck ball, and they set their play off again. And in terms of how that links up the entire attack from the Leinster group, it's a phenomenal part of his game. And he's also got the work rate, the defensive work rate. Apart from that early high tackle that my mate wrote him off, he made. I don't think he missed another one. I don't know what the exact stats are, but his tackle count was high. And then he brings the leadership and the sense of calm, and I think a sense of purpose. He looks like he's pretty driven and aggressive for a guy of his age. So
would you put a lot of what we've seen from Levy and Ryan this season down to Fardy's influence as well?
I certainly think so. I think he's. I think by all accounts he's taken. Well, who can take James Ryan under their wing? He's reached up to James Ryan.
19 games, 19 wins.
Yeah. So I think he's by all accounts, I think he's had quite a big impact on James Ryan in terms of his approach and his mentality, and it's clearly working.
The Racing pack then is the one area where you feel really maybe they can get parity at the very least against Leinster, and that back row with Bernard Leroux and Yannick Nyanga, particularly at number 8. Is there potentially, is this maybe finally the one game where Leinster's injuries and the loss of Heaslip and O'Brien and Ruddock to injury, Van der Fleer, that finally catches up with them?
Well, I don't think it's going to be like a game too many for that trio. I think they're actually peaking, that trio. I think they're outstanding. But I think where they might meet a match in the Parisian back row, and Nyanga, Leroux and Laurie, they certainly outplayed Munster. O'Mahony and Stander were as anonymous as they've been in a long, long time, and that wasn't an accident. And I don't think.
And how did they do that?
I'm not sure. I mean, how do you outplay those two guys? I mean, I don't think.
That's why Liam Toland's in Bilbao.
Yeah.
He might know either, but he'd never admit it.
Well, I just thought. I think there's a great athleticism to Nyanga's play that. potentially like is would have been ahead of Stander, for example. I would say he's faster around the field. I think his capacity to beat players, and as opposed to just, you know, Stander is a grinder, and he battles and he makes 5 to 10 yards 30 times a game, and it wouldn't have been enough in that first 30-minute period. They couldn't hold on to possession. I think as opposed to, I think also Munster underperformed. I think we're all in agreement about that, and I think their line-out faults absolutely contributed to the underperformance of O'Mahony and Stander. So I do think that was a contribution, but I think Leroux, the wonderfully named Wenceslas, Larre and Nyanga are 3 outstanding individual players, but have a very nice link. And in terms of complementary back rowers, guys who are good on the floor, guys who can carry, guys who are line-out options, they're bringing all those things to the table. So it'll be a really good battle against the Leinster guys.
Yeah, you've been thinking about the line-out as well, and obviously Donnacha Ryan is going to be focus of an awful lot of the attention, considering the connection that's there. But Makarawa as well, up against Evan Toner and James Ryan. James Ryan has done everything right in his career so far. I mentioned that he's literally won every single game of professional rugby he's ever played.
Yeah.
But how different is this a challenge to what he would have faced even at international level with those two?
Well, I think the line-out currently is an area where players can psych themselves out and they can climb up your own backside in terms of video analysis. So Donnacha Ryan knows our calls. We've got to change. We've X, Y, and Z to do. Suddenly the walls start closing in. I think I have name-checked and name-dropped Mick Byrne on a number of occasions on this show, who was the skills coach for the All Blacks for the last 2 World Cups.
Right.
And he also moved into coaching their line-out. And his view of the modern line-out is it still comes down to timing and execution of your own process. It doesn't come down to how good your analysis is of the opposition. And I think at the highest level, actually what I think may happen here is that Leinster are going to win about 95% of their ball, and Racing are going to win about 95% of their ball. I don't think one team is going to come in and spoil the others by outwitting them. I think they're... So
the basis of his thinking is that you could spend hours and hours analysing the opposition.
Yeah.
But if they stick to their plan, it's not really going to matter. That you may get, some days you may get 1 turnover, another day you may get 3, but ultimately you're not really in control of it. All you're in control about is getting your own 95%.
It's kind of like the old cowboy movies. You know, they're both facing each other, but one guy has the draw early in the line-out. I mean, your hooker is holding the ball. It's not like it's up for challenge. Your hooker has the ball. He knows when he's throwing. He knows the call. If the footwork is right, if the lift is right, if the jump is right, and the throw is on point, you win your line-out. That's it. It doesn't matter how many times they analyse it. They throw a guy up, they read it. If your timing is better, you win your line-out. And I think it can be that simple, and it has been that simple at times. I think Munster got that completely wrong in the semi-final. I think Donnacha Ryan psyched them out. I think the first 5 minutes, they threw a ridiculous short throw, Scannell through to the front. They got spooked. Their next 3 line-outs, they overthrew at 6 at the tail of the line-out up in the Racing 22, where it was absolutely imperative that they held possession. They didn't.
So you put that down to overthinking the situation?
Absolutely. I think paralysis by analysis. These guys are doing 6-7 hour days on video analysis, and every modern day team has a fun sponge line-out nerd, like every team does, and it's, you know, it can get over the top. You know, you have 120 calls, guys are losing the run of themselves, and actually if you just break it down, get your process right, you know, you've got the early draw with the throw, and you can break it down and simplify it. I think I'm not being dismissive to say it can be that simple. It's just so difficult to get that process right.
Well, you would also think in a final, when there is the pressure on, that overthinking it can come back to bite you in the ass. You want to go back to base level at times when you're tired, when fatigue kicks in. Is that unusual to have the skills coach involved in the line-out?
Probably is, yeah. And again, they went and won the World Cup twice, so maybe we should copy them. Well, he's also an ex-Aussie rules player, so he never played rugby. So that's probably unusual to have a guy who never played rugby as your skills coach, but good enough for the All Blacks. He coached in Leinster. That's how I know him. I get in touch with him back from the days when I was never picked, and I used to work on my skills a lot. I got to know Mick quite well.
So what's he doing as a skills coach with the line-out?
I would imagine he's working on things like footwork, the thrower in particular. He's breaking down the closed skills that player. So he would work with place kickers. He would work with guys who are punting to touch. He'd work on the ability to pass off either hand for the tight forwards, and he would break down skills like the hooker behind the arm, ball behind the head, release,
body shape,
all these little technical things that he's probably researched, he's looked into and developed. But I suppose.
So he's not necessarily working on the line-out calls.
No,
he's working on the technique involved in executing whatever they've decided.
Yeah, I'd say they've got another much more nerdy guy than Mick working on the calls, but he would be very much in terms of the actual skill and execution.
We are here with Air, the home of Air Sport. Get amazing live sporting content free with Air Broadband. I want to bring you a little bit of Alan Quinlan. He was on OTB AM this week. He thinks that the French side will be looking to hit Leinster at the line-out to provide an attacking platform for themselves. Alan has been silenced, but that's what he was trying to say, without question. I'm sure he was just going to go along with everything. How could he know more about the line-out than you?
There's no chance.
I just don't think it's. I just don't think it's in any ways possible. So we do have live commentary coming up. By the way, it's a 4:45 kickoff Irish time. A lot has been spoken about the opening 20 minutes because of the way Racing demolished Munster, and you look at their statistics, they score a third of their points in the opening quarter. And I was just wondering, listening to O'Driscoll last night, then just talking before we came in, and you were looking at the selection of Mark Andrew and how you think Sexton maybe is going to target him, and looking at that back line and maybe Leinster can ping some high balls in and put some pressure on. And also listening to O'Driscoll, who was thinking actually one of the ways to stop them in the first 20 minutes is just keep hold of the ball yourself, not to kick it away. How do you see that balancing itself out?
I'd agree with Brian. I think Leinster will invariably do their best to maintain possession early on in order to dampen the Racing, I suppose you could call it their history. It's not quite a history, but it's a trend that they're scoring early, and they're scoring regularly early. So I would agree, hold on to your own possession and don't give them that opportunity. I think as the game evolves, what we've seen is Johnny Sexton has, I'd imagine he's implemented it himself with the management, but I think it's a brilliant tactic, and it's very underutilised, is to kick away possession in quite good attacking territory. It sounds counterintuitive, but they pinged up some seriously good high balls, or Johnny did rather, particularly in the Scarlets game, that put them under all kinds of pressure. And
so when Leinster are inside their own 22, that's when they're holding on to the ball, but when they're starting to push up into the opposition half, that's when they're kicking it away.
Well, if you look at how much space there is to attack on the field when you're deep in your own territory, I mean, the full-backs and wingers are dropping back 60 metres. If it's a scrum, 8 people are engaged. So in defence, Racing or any other team have a 10, 12 and 13 off a scrum, and you've got acres of space. It's about having the balls. It's about your relationship with risk. But Leinster have a great relationship with risk, and I think they've had no issue in moving the ball from deep because of that strategy. Now, if you flip that and you go into the opposition half or 30, 40 metres out, the fullbacks and wingers in the opposition are not dropping deep because they can't, because the try line is there, that's it. So you've much more condensed defensive line to play against. So it's actually, and that's why we see a lot of teams run 20, 30 phases and getting nowhere. And I like what they're doing. I like what Johnny Sexton is doing. He's saying, okay, let's use this to, again, squeeze and put more pressure. Let's bang up some high balls, right? And he's executing them brilliantly. They're landing 2-3 yards away from the try line. I mean, a guy like Mark Andrew, who's 5'7", I think is going to get peppered. I think Leinster are going to hold the ball or try to hold the ball for that first 20 minutes, and then I can see Johnny start reining in the kicks. And interestingly, Dave said it isn't, the sun's not splitting the skies there. So again, with maybe a slightly slippy ball, it could be a tactic that Johnny employs, after that initial period.
I love that line that they have a great relationship at risk, because keeping hold of the ball inside your own 22 is a risk. You're having to put a trust in your own skill set. Is that where this Leinster team is a step above everybody else? That they have the talent, they have the players, maybe forged through the academy system, the confidence built up at Ireland, that actually you watch them when they have the ball inside their own 22 and they never look like it's a risk. It looks comfortable. It looks like Manchester City passing the ball out from the back.
Yeah.
They're just never going to lose possession.
I think it's a psychology. I mean, it's no different to pass the ball from 10 to 13 in your own 22. If you're being plain about it in terms of the actual execution, it's the same width pass. It's just the psychology of why we're doing it and where we're doing it. And I don't think Gervin Dempsey gets enough credit, really. No one ever talks about him. He's the backs coach, and I'm sure he's got an input in that. I know Lancaster is probably directing team attack, and Leo obviously has huge input in terms of the overall way they play. But so does your backs coach, and his view that, his view that you can give it a go from here, and you can do it in a judicious way. They're not just flinging it around. They're running decoy lines and angles that still holds those 4 or 5 defenders, if that many.
How different is that to Ireland?
It's very different. We haven't done that at all, and I think Joe has a different relationship with risk, but he's been hugely successful. It doesn't. I mean, my personal view is, I think the game is gradually going back towards being a bit more risky, and I think the more successful teams are going to do it. And I think what Joe did with the Irish team in the early stages of the Six Nations looked kind of mundane but incredibly effective. And I think as the tournament developed, the team earned the right to be a bit more risky. And in that English game, we were outstanding in terms of our attack play, and we weren't dull and effective. We were outstanding and creative. I think the Leinster, the difference, as you mentioned, or is this the difference? The difference with the Leinster team is they can win ugly, and they can win by playing from deep, and they've showed 4 or 5 different ways to win this year. They in the group stages, they ran everything from deep off scrum ball in the Montpellier game in the RDS. I covered it for off the ball, and they ran it from everywhere. Ross Byrne played 10, Carberry played fullback, and he scorched in for 2 tries, and they cut them to ribbons in terms of their set piece attack. And then in a very similar conditions, in terms of conditions, a very similar day against Scarlets, albeit a bit hotter, and the Scarlet was a dry day. They did the total opposite of all their scrum balls. They just hit Henshaw up, which is very like the Irish style. They smashed Henshaw up, and Sexton's try in the semi-final where he kind of ghosted in from a yard out. That was from about 5 or 6 consecutive carries, including Fardy, including Sean Cronin. But it started from Henshaw just being used as a hit-up merchant, very much like he's done with the Irish squad. Leinster don't always do that. So they're showing a variation in their game that makes them so dangerous.
It feels like there's a lot of ways Leinster can win this game, and victory has many fathers with the coaching staff, and who should take all the credit and who should take the responsibility if they do go on and win it. Before we wrap up, if Racing are to go and win this, how did they win this game?
I don't believe they're going to win it by deconstructing, or rather, I don't believe they're going to win it by 2 or 3 key Leinster weaknesses. I can only see them winning it in the sense that they've got so many, probably 6 or 7 game-changing, incredible athletes.
So Teddy Toma does...
Everyone on their day does something magical. That's how I see them winning it. And let's face it, like, we're talking about one of the most eccentric, flair-based, unpredictable, brilliant, and at times terrible clubs in the history of rugby. So ain't anybody out there.
Why are they a terrible club?
No, I said at times wonderful, at times terrible.
Go on, I know you've been researching on the history of Racing.
Well, I did. It wasn't so much research. I'm not that keen a researcher. It was that I met way back when I was in Harlequins Harlequins had a relationship with Eden Park, who the clothing manufacturer.
Right.
Their logo is a pink dicky bow. And Harlequins went, for some reason, or ex-players from Harlequins went to the French Championship final and met up with guys from Eden Park, one of whom was Frank Maynell. He's one of the founders. And he told me where the pink dicky bow for Eden Park came from. And it actually came from Racing Club. So Frank Maynell was a player, Jean-Baptiste Lafont, Eric Blanc. They were the three founders of Eden Park, and they were all playing in the French Championship sides of the 80s for Racing. And what happened was, as a protest to racism within the crowd in the French quarter-final, they were booing one of the black players on the Racing team for the semi-final in 87. Every player painted their face black with boot polish for the semi-final in 1987, and they went out and won the semi-final. In the final, they said, we got to do something else that's a bit eccentric. So they all wore pink dicky bows over in their collar.
Right.
So he told me this, and I just thought it was the most amazing thing. I thought he was embellishing it, and he wasn't, because it's in the history books. Went back and looked. So they lost the final in 87, and they got back to the final in 1990, and they played, I think they played Toulon. And for the warm-up, they arrived on bicycles, and they cycled around the Parc des Princes, where the final was, with baskets of bread and wine, and at half-time they had champagne, and they won the final. And that is gone down in the annals of history as one of the most flamboyant and most French things you could ever do. And how could you not love a club that operates like that? So at times, wonderful. But they got relegated 2 years after that, and then they spent 5 years in the Pro D2, and they were actually, there's two Irish players, Dave Hewitt and Mick Carroll, went over and played there. Both had been with Leinster previously. Mick was their first overseas captain in the history of the club back in 08, 09. And Lorenzetti came in around 09, pumped millions in, and brought in marquee players. And from that, in that ensuing period, the last 10 years, they've climbed back out of Pro D2, or whatever it's called, Pro D2, and they've gone and won a championship. So yeah, it's an interesting, colourful history.
Brilliant. Thanks for that.
No problem.
So really put it up to Liam Toland.
I can't believe I didn't get to know.
Really put it up to him. I'm going to see what he knows about it. I'm going to see what he knows about his history.
Research.
I trust me, 100%. It is going to be the very first question that I ask him. Great stuff, Andy. You're predicting a Leinster win?
I am, but I'm not going with the bookies anymore. I think it's going to be a bit tighter. Yeah.
All right, great stuff. We'll talk to you over the next week or so, and you're going to be at the RDS for us next week, Leinster against Munster in the Pro 14 semi-final. Going to take a quick break, and then we're talking football with Gary Breen.
The Saturday Panel on Off the Ball.
In association with the Air Sport app, allowing you to cast your favourite sporting action from your tablet or mobile phone straight to your TV.
Bobby's Late Breakfast.
This Sunday, I hear the incredible story of the woman who spent 41 days adrift in the Pacific, whose story is now being turned into a major motion picture. PJ Gallagher stops by to talk young offenders and old jokes. Chasing Abbey are live in studio. We roll back the years to the riot on Spike Island, plus the Stone Roses are in the cultural toolbox.
Bobby's Late Breakfast.
With Emirates.
Join me this Sunday at 9 and let me ease you into your Sunday.
On News Talk.
You can't handle the truth. No. You talking to me?